Okay, so we can go. So
Yeah.
thank you very much, Dr. Marilyn Marbell Wilson, neurodevelopmental pediatrician and medical director and CEO of Mission Pediatrics Accra, Ghana, for joining us on this interview.
Thank you.
Well, like we know, World Autism Awareness Day is just around us, and the idea is for us to create awareness on this condition, and also try and do away with stigma, which we have, which has become part of it. So we will try as much as we can to educate our listeners on this condition,
Mhm.
if it is actually from the forefathers, like they say, if it is a village disease or condition, you're going to tell us all of this. So let's start with the basic question, which is, what is autism?
Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me onto your program. So autism is a developmental condition, which means it's a childhood condition. It will be diagnosed when the person is a child. It involves, it affects their communication, the way they understand language, and the way they can express themselves or express their thoughts. It also affects the way they interact with other people and also interact with their environment. So basically, it's a social communication condition that we see in childhood. Um, Even though I've said it so simply, it does affect every sphere of the child's life. So one um, important thing we need to have in mind is that apart from their social communication challenges and delays, it also affects the way they process sensory inputs, which is a really important part. So our sensations are vision, like your sight, the
Mm.
way you hear sounds, taste, and touch, movement. And a lot of the time is this differences in sensory processing that brings about certain behaviors that I'm sure we'll talk about ways in which we identify children on the autism spectrum. These behaviors sometimes look very atypical or they look different. And so then people start wondering what is wrong with this child. So you see a child covering their ears with certain sounds
Yeah, yeah.
or spinning or moving all over the place or tasting everything they see, licking the wall, all these times. This is usually due to sensory differences. So that
Well,
is autism in a
yeah,
nutshell.
yeah. Our listeners would really like you to break this down further.
Okay.
Maybe in a layman's language. Tell us
Yeah.
what are the causes?
Okay. So the truth is that nobody has been able to actually tell us 100% what causes autism.
Hmm.
The research is still going on. We definitely know that majority of the time it is due to genetic changes in the individual. And maybe let me break down genetic changes. So genes are sort of the encoding material in every human being. So your genes determine how you look like, how you're going to talk. Genes determine how come children look like their parents,
Yeah.
but they also determine the way your body functions, the way your brain functions, the way you think and everything. So the research is showing us that there are certain genes, about 100 of them have been identified, that there, if there are changes in those genes, give you the potential to have autism. But it is not so straightforward because there are people who may have the changes in that gene but do not exhibit autism. So it's a bit complex. So simply put, it's genetic changes, but we do think there are a bit of environmental aspects to it. Okay.
So how common is this autism in our sub-region? I know a lot of people, usually people mix up Down syndrome and autism because
Yeah.
people can't really tell what a child or someone looks like with autism. But how common
Yeah.
is this condition in our sub-region?
Okay, so unfortunately, like a lot of other conditions, we do not have real data for our sub-region. There are
Mm,
few studies, especially in Nigeria and South Africa, but generally, the impression is that it's not less or even more than what we find in the world. So some of the numbers are between 1% and 2.3%, which means that if you take 100 children below the age of 3, you would find one with autism, or if you take 100, you'd find at least one or two with autism. So this prevalence is definitely higher than what you would find in Down syndrome, which is 1 in 600 of children. So yeah, so the simple answer is that even though we haven't done studies, it is as common as it is in every other part of the world.
mm, indeed. Well, let's talk about the fact that people still try to recognize or identify what child or what person has autism. You mentioned
Yeah.
in your introduction some of the signs, putting their hands in their ears and the
Yeah.
screaming. Would you say this is common? I mean, you can actually see other children maybe playing wild play, or does that mean that child has autism?
No, not at all. So, autism comes with a myriad and lots of different features.
Okay.
So, there are three main areas we look at in autism. But having said that, every child who is diagnosed with autism will have different features and may not look exactly as the next child who has autism. So, first of all, autism doesn't have a face, they don't look a certain way, they look like
Mm,
any other child. Okay. So let's talk about the three different areas. So
okay.
the first is the communication, as I said, communication, understanding language, and then saying things, expressing your thoughts. So children on the autism spectrum will either have delayed speech, as in they do not talk early. Usually by 15 months, you expect that your child has started saying some single words like mama, dada. They may not say that at all. On the other hand, they may say some things, but they will not say it in a communicative manner. So they may be saying they're reciting their ABCs, 1, 2, 3, seeing apple, seeing bird, and saying it, but they cannot communicate, daddy, water, or daddy, I want to go to the bathroom. Okay, so it's a spectrum. They may not either talk at all, or they'll be saying things, reciting things, but they're still not communicating. So
Mm.
those are some of the features you'd see when it comes to the communication part. You may
Now,
see
okay.
children, sorry, you may see children who are repeating stuff. So you say, how are you? And they also say, how are you? You ask them a question, are you okay? They'll say, okay. They just repeat what you say. Okay,
Mm.
okay.
Well,
Then
you
the
you
social
meant
interaction.
okay. Go ahead,
Sorry.
please. I'm sorry. Go
Okay,
ahead.
social interaction.
Yeah.
Social interaction bit is how we interact and play.
Hmm.
So they may have a different kind of playing. So some children will want to play, interact, they have a game they're doing, but this child may want to play by himself,
Mm.
or he plays with other people, but he's doing more of pushing or pulling or just wanting to be
Mm.
chased and running around. Having said that, you know that some people who have there are some children who are really energetic and
Yeah. So
hyperactive.
that was the term I was looking for. Energetic
Okay.
children. Hmm.
Yes, yes. So we have lots of children who are energetic and hyperactive, but it doesn't mean that every child who has energy has autism. So you need enough of these features I've talked about in all these three areas: the communication, the interaction, the sensory, repetitive movement. And all the features should be such that it is not allowing this child to function as they are supposed to. That is the caveat. So some children may have speech delay, but they are communicating, they are interacting well, they don't have any sensory issues, they do not have autism. Some children are communicating, but they are very anxious, they don't want to play. It doesn't mean they have autism. You need enough in all these three areas for us to say that you have autism.
Mm. Well, how difficult is this condition for parents who discover that they have a child or children with this condition? How difficult is it?
Yes, in my experience, it is very difficult. I mean, I think first of all is because there's so much stigma attached to it. And so far in our sub-region, because we are now, learning about autism when it comes to the treatments and everything, maybe what they have seen in the past is not it's not encouraging. So most parents, I'm sure all parents, once they are told and given the diagnosis, is devastating for them. But once they get to know that there is hope and there is treatment, there's a way to support this child to be the best they can be, a lot of them come to accept, and then they put their, to the wheel, and then they start working at it. But it is devastating for most parents, because once you want your child to be talking like every other child, behaving like every other child, and then once a doctor tells you that this is autism, we don't have a cure, but we have support, then all the hopes you had for your child seems to go to the dumps. And so it is a very difficult diagnosis, I must say.
Well, let's talk about social acceptance and stigmatization. How can this be managed?
Hmm. I think what we are doing is, one, we need to talk and talk and talk about it till we saturate every aspect of our culture and our region with the knowledge that autism is a condition, it's a neurobiological. It means that there's a reason. It is not spiritual, it's not a myth. You cannot catch autism by playing with somebody. It is not the fault of the parents. If people, people do not are afraid of what they do not know.
Yeah.
Once they understand what it is, and I've experienced this so many times, once extended family understands what it means, then the stigma seems to drop away. So I think advocacy and education of our populace of what it means, and then showcasing people who have succeeded in, even though they have autism, to show everybody that there is a future. I'm sure you have people who have autism in our offices. It's just that they may not have a diagnosis and we not know them.
Mm.
And so we are okay with them, but they are just like any other person.
Mm. You mentioned diagnosing. I mean, when a parent takes a child to the doctor, how is this done? Is this some of injection or something? How's it
Okay.
done? Tell us.
Okay. So when it comes to diagnosis of autism, even though I've said it's a brain and it's a biological condition, we do not have blood tests or maybe x-rays or imaging things to diagnosis. So we use observation of the child. We use a detailed interview of the with the parents, sometimes with extended family, with a teacher, if their child is in school. And then we have certain tools like psychological tools, all the features I told you about. We have to have enough evidence. So it's like an investigation in the police station. We have to have enough evidence and score and make sure that these children really meet diagnostic criteria. So there's a set rule or criteria that you have to meet all over the world before you can be diagnosed with autism. So mainly observation, interview to diagnose. Yeah.
My final question, your words of encouragement to parents with children with autism.
Okay. So, well, this gives me the chance to say that this year, 2022, the theme everywhere for the World Autism Awareness Month and the World Autism Awareness Day
Mm.
is quality inclusive education for all children on the autism spectrum. It is very important as we continue to learn about autism, not to keep these children away from school. I mean, in our villages and even in our cities, a lot of children, because of the energy and the atypical behavior, are sent away from their regular schools, or the parents just keep them at home because they don't want this wahala and trouble when the children go. But it is really important that they are included in everything. Expose the children to everything that other children are being exposed to. Let them go to school. Teach us to find a different way to engage these children. And when you read about therapy and treatments, that is what it is. You're trying to get these children to be part of us and be part of the environment. So and treat every family and every person who knows a child with autism, take them to school, get them educated, get them socializing, be with their friends, be with their family, expose them to everything you can't imagine. And you would realize that you'll find something they are good at. Then you can teach them. Once they get something they know how to do, they excel in it, and then they are fulfilled. A lot of the atypical and behaviors will then start to go down once they are fulfilled and they know they have a purpose.
Dr. Marilyn Marbell Wilson, neurodevelopmental pediatrician, medical director, and CEO of Mission Pediatrics Accra, Ghana. Thank you for talking to us on this topic.
You're welcome.
And we will see you next year.
Okay. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye. Bye.